All right, welcome back to the On Purpose podcast. Today I have Amy here with us. And Amy, I'm so honored for you to be a part of this journey and on this podcast today, sharing your story with us. So I appreciate you and thank you for this privilege. So, where were you born? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Spartanburg, South Carolina. It's a medium-sized town. Born and raised there until I was 18 and left for college. And then, yeah, never looked back.
How was life growing up there?
It it was a challenge. Um, you know, you grow up in a certain environment and you think it's normal and it's all you've known. And once I got away from the environment and started connecting with different people, I had a lot of questions. And one of the biggest questions for me was, why don't I remember the first 15 years of my life? People would talk about childhood and adolescence. And literally, like, one of my first memories was a suicide attempt and being in the hospital. And so I was very disconnected and had just a huge memory gap. Um, I knew I didn't ever want to go back to where I came from. And I knew there was, I knew internally there, it didn't feel right and energetically. And so when I was able to go to college, I went about 3 hours away and I was like, I'm going to do everything different. And I'm going on this path and I'm going to figure out what this is inside of me and what's wrong. And, um, and so I started, right in college, like going within. Like I started counseling, which I'd never had as a child. I started reading Wayne Dyer books and The Road Less Traveled and spiritual books, just trying to figure out what is this disconnect within me. And it's been a journey. It started there, and you know, um, yeah, that was pretty much it. It looked on the outside like it was normal, and yet there was such a disconnection within that I was like on a journey to figure it out, if that makes
Oh,
sense.
yeah, how old were you when you attempted suicide?
I was 15.
15. Do you remember why?
It was, well, actually, I do. I remember my mom was very harsh with me. And I grew up literally feeling like nothing I did was right. And so I was a target of her own self hatred that had nothing to do with me, but I was extremely sensitive and took everything personal. So I had actually gone to the church for the first time when I was 15. I had run away from home and I went to church. And I went with some friends. My family wasn't involved with church. And my mom, for whatever reason, that was wrong too. And it was like, for once in my life, I was starting to feel like, oh my God, there is something. Like I feel connected to something. And when I got home, it was just, it was like that was wrong too. And I literally just remember there's nothing I can't do. That's right. I can't even go to church. And so I took an overdose. And I took an overdose of like Valium, and the only thing that I remember was I remember hearing my mom, like I was wobbly, I was in and out, and my mom was told my dad, like, we have to take her to the hospital. We have to teach her a lesson never to do this again. And so I went and had my stomach pumped and everything, and then we were in the emergency room like all night, and
Yeah.
my parents went to work the next day and we literally never talked about it. That was it. They took me to my grandparents' home. They went to work, and you know that was kind of it. I think the hospital mandated like one counseling appointment, and I cried and I refused to say anything, and so nothing else was ever done. So I never really got the help I needed. at that time. I also had an eating disorder at that time or shortly after. And so, yeah, there were a lot of challenges within me growing up that I was very, yeah.
My bandwidth kind of just was a little low at that moment, so I apologize. I missed a little portion of that. But I pray that it was recorded on your end, so we'll see. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you went out for a second. You went out for a second.
Okay. All right. So you didn't really even meet that part of yourself again? Like when was the last time you revisited that? Have you ever spoken to that with your parents?
I think the next time that we spoke about it was, oh my God, we got an echo. Do you hear it? About it was, oh my God, we got an echo. Do you hear it? Like, I'm like, can you hear it now? Yeah, I hope you can edit this thing. Oh my God. Like, I'm like, can you hear it? It is so delayed. Oh my God. All right. Something.
That's okay. I love it. It's perfect.
It's so the next time we spoke about it. Oh my God. All right. Something after my second suicide attempt, which was when my daughter was like 1 or 2, and I had another overdose suicide attempt. And something was spoken to it at that time, but it was never addressed. It was nothing. It was just, I remember my mom saying, oh, yeah, she does this. She did this before or something like that. Something was spoken. And I was actually in the hospital. This is really distracting. I'm trying to act like it's not there, but I don't know what I can do about it. Sarah Jane. Sarah Jane. So around age 31, 32, when my daughter was probably about 2, I had my second suicide attempt. And my mom had come forth and told my husband, oh, yeah, she does this. And she's done this before. And that was the only time I remember her bringing it up or it being spoken of in my family. So at that time, I did start to, I was actually in counseling when I had this suicide attempt, and I was actually on a whole bunch of medicine because I'd been diagnosed as bipolar. And I was on a mood stabilizer, and my psychiatrist was like giving me all these meds.
Do you remember what they were?
Oh, God. Not at that time, because literally they tried me on so many antidepressants and mood stabilizers. I know I did like Depakote, lithium. I can't remember if I did Zyprexa or not. I feel like maybe I did, but that Holy Spirit. But I had literally tried probably every antidepressant up until age 44 that was out on the market, and nothing worked. After this point, when I was in college, Zoloft worked for like until I had my children, and then after that, nothing else would. And it wasn't supposed to, because I wasn't supposed to be on them. But yeah, I was really drugged. And so after that, I did receive help. Can you pause again? So what led up to the second suicide attempt was, I'm playing this role and I'm being mom. I had an older son and I'm going through all the motions and playing the game and pretending. And underneath, like, there's like this deep well of darkness. And after my daughter was born, I started having flashbacks of some sexual abuse that I totally repressed. And so I remember the first time my dad held my daughter was when they started coming. And so that's what led me to counseling after she was born. And then, they weren't going away. And so that's what the mood stabilizers were for as well, were to help with the flashbacks and the night terrors. And just, I was on so much sleeping medicine as well that I was just like, I don't even know how I functioned. So fast forward after the suicide attempt, I'm going through the motions. I'm going to church. We're like teaching Sunday school class. Like we've got this huge, support system. Like literally on the outside, I've got the most ideal life. Like finances weren't an issue. I've got two amazing, beautiful children, and there's just this like deep darkness inside that I'm not able to access. It was deeper than the sexual abuse because you know, I'd been dealing with that for a couple of years or, in counseling. And there was just this unsettledness that, like, I've got everything I want. And what is wrong with me? Like, why can't I be happy?
Mhm.
And, from there, um, I spent a lot of my time, I was a licensed counselor, or I was a counselor, and I was working with people like me. And, I just felt like a phony and like a fraud. And it was just, there was something I couldn't shake. And I knew, like, when I got out of graduate school, I was like, oh, I'm going to go save the world. Like, I had so many ideas of what I could do with this so called degree. And um, when I had the suicide attempt, I was actually staying home with my daughter. And that felt really, because my whole identity was tied up in what I did and, how I served or thought I was serving other people. And so once I did go back to work, I had a few years where I felt really connected and alive. And until about when she was about 5. And I started getting all these messages about God preparing me for something. We're still actively involved. Like I am on fire for God. Like I am
Mhm.
like Jesus and Sunday school, like going on all these retreats. My husband and I, like we're doing all the things, and it felt very real to me at the time. And God asked me, I think my daughter was around 5. God, or what I thought was God, and it could have been it could have been wanted me to go work in a maximum security prison. And there was something I just remember in the interview, they're like, why do you want to come work in a prison? And I'm just like, well, one, I'm up for a challenge, and two, I'm being called to be a light in a very dark place, and I don't know any darker place than a maximum security prison that that I have access to. And it seemed like a good fit for a few months. It was I really felt like I was on purpose there. And then something else outside of me that I now understand is like spiritual warfare and
Mhm.
me running from my own darkness. Um, Something else so much bigger than me was going on at the time. And shortly after that, I didn't last for maybe like 3 months. And then I had a complete meltdown of everything I'd ever known and my identity just crashed. Like, I was literally just running away from myself, not going within and looking to the out to feel something, and covering up Jesus and working for God in the process, you know.
What were you doing to try to fill that void?
Um, well, the work in the prison was, and some sexual stuff, like, long story short, one of the inmates started threatening me and my family, and ended up raping me, basically. And if I told anybody, then he would kill my family. And I basically recreated a situation from childhood, like verbatim. Like, I was running away, like all those years that I did not remember was from a threat from my grandfather, threatening my mom and my dad and my sister. Like, it was just, it was the shadow catching up with me. And so I recreated the same scenario in the prison. And when I did finally tell what was going on, my worst nightmare like happened. And that was my husband. Basically, I told him what happened. He said, well, we need to get you help. He put me in a mental hospital, and basically left me there, called my parents and said, come pick her up. She can't come back here. Now, I was not a victim. I was not a good wife. I will say that. Like, I was mean. I showed up like my mom because that was all I knew. I had sexually inappropriate, emotional affairs, like, and this was his last straw. This was the straw that broke the camel's back. And he did it out of fear too, because there was a threat on the family, from the inmate. And so at that point, this was like, he basically took the kids, took all the money, took my car and everything. And then I was 3 hours away where my family was. And that started probably the darkest time of my life that I actually can connect with and have access to. And that was losing my children, because he was fighting for custody, and he had separated me from, or he had separated me from Sunday school class, basically said that I chose to have sex with him. And I think that was just his ego's way of being okay with what he was doing. But I was disconnected from everyone and everything, and everything I knew fell apart. So I'm back home with my parents, and then
How old are you now at this
I
point in
am
time?
35, 36. And I know I'm all over the place here. There's a lot.
God's working miracles.
All right. Trust God. And so a lot of stuff came out after this, like, you can only run from yourself for so long. And so I stayed with my family for about 3 months. My parents, as long as I needed them, there was so much codependency in my family. As long as I needed them, they were there for me. Like, my mom wanted me to go on disability. Like, she was going to take care of me. Like, finances weren't an issue, as long as, she could have that control, because control, you know, was her thing. And so I was there for about 3 months, and we started to get close, and I told him about the flashbacks, from the sexual abuse. I told him about abortion I had had. We talked about the suicide attempts, and trying to connect dots and stuff. And just saying, I've been screaming for assistance with the eating disorders, the suicide attempts, and everything. So I took about 3 months of not working, Um, I had to have supervised visitation with my children. We did this for a few months, and then I was finally like, okay, enough. And so I ended up getting a job so I could be next to the children and going back to work doing crisis work. Now I'm a counselor and I am a total mess. Okay. And this is like, there's still some shame around that. It's just like, oh my God. But I just have to remember, like, I only have to be one step ahead of somebody else to bring them out of the darkness. But I did crisis work for the next 10 years and started to get my life on track, you know, doing the things, running away from my shadow a little more. Um, I was on a good path with God, not drinking, not having sex with men, for certain, all these behaviors that had, driven me. I stayed good for a little bit and I was like doing all the right things and until it called back up with me again. And so I'm working crisis work. I mean, people loved me, like they really did. Like I worked in a psych hospital and I went into communities and there are a lot of repeat people that just, they come in and out. They want that compassion, that love. And I'm just like, I really got, my ego got a hit because my identity was tied up in that. Some of the time I was working two jobs. Like I literally had a day job doing crisis work and a nighttime job where I would be called out of bed to go see people in the community somewhere. And I put myself in a lot of dangerous situations with something else, that I did. Cause now I'm just like, being around somebody who's suicidal, homicidal, psychotic in a community, it's just like, what are you thinking? But a lot of these behaviors, I just understand a little better now. And so I did that for about 10 years. And do you want me to keep going or do you want to ask questions?
That's a good segue. I do have a question. So,
Yes.
how did you get in contact with Earthwaking after this point?
Okay. After this point, fast forward another 10 or 12 years, and Megan, um, a lady that I had met who was virtually a stranger to me. We had met in an online group that had hundreds of people in there, and she was just like, it was an energy healing. And she said, asked me to be her practice partner. And I'm like, I blew her off for a while. I'm like, I don't have time. I just started a business, like, gave her all the reasons I couldn't. She was persistent, and eventually we did meet. And so she was connected to Earthwaking. She had never been here, but was attending the classes. And
What
so
class? What was the group that you guys were both in?
it was called Awake.
Okay.
And it was, yeah, it was energy healing, different modalities and stuff. And um, she told me that she was moving away from that and really connected with this village, and she felt like her focus was more with the village. And I'd seen, because she was very quiet, like she did not talk in Awake at all. Like when she asked me to come, it was just, the whole thing was bizarre. It was so God, it didn't make sense on any level. And so she invited me to a remember experience. Now, I had just put like $250,000, me and my business partner, into a business that we just opened. And she asked me in this remember experience, and I give her like all the reasons that I can't go. And fast forward, I'd been seeing the number 333, which is my number for God, for probably about 3 or 4 months. And I would see it everywhere. And I'm just like, I remember asking God, like, what are you showing me? What is this 333? What is it? And so she asked me to the remember experience. I give her every reason why I can't go. And then one of them being money, because I just put everything into my
A
business
new business, yeah.
and we weren't making any money. And she was like, it's only $333 and I'll pay for it. I was like, oh God, you got me. Like I knew just with that number, I knew that that was an answer that you're supposed to be here. So
Wow.
I'm like, okay, I don't know how I'm going to do this, God. If you want me there, you're going to make a way. I'm going to reverse engineer this. I'm not even going to talk to my business partner. I was mainly the one there. She was doing all the behind the scenes things. I said, I'm not even going to talk about it. I'm going to book the flight and everything. So she can't talk me out of it. And so I booked it to come here
And
for
when
the
was
Remember
that?
experience in November 2023.
Wow. So that was the third Remember experience? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, probably so. I think yeah, because I've done like five. I think I did last time.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So three is my
Wow.
number. Like three is like everything with me. So that would make the most sense that I would be there at three. I hadn't
It
connected that.
was the third. It was the third. So God's speaking
Okay.
again.
That makes perfect sense, with God and me and I hear things in three. I know it's God. I see the numbers. And so I come here and I'm still very fake, phony, disconnected. Um,
Mhm.
I come here for 5 days. We didn't spend any time before or after. We were simply here for the Remember experience. And I knew there was something different about this place. Like it was everything opposite of everything that I've ever known, like confronting dysfunction, egos, like people yelling, and like everything that did not make sense to my logical mind. But I knew and I felt and I was connected enough to know that there's something real here. There's something raw and real here. And I knew that I was supposed to be here. And it's funny because Cole, who's here now, he and I met on a plane coming from Atlanta, and he ended up not leaving. Like he was my first contact with the village, like personal contact, and he ended up going. And like when the Remember was over and we were supposed to leave, we were supposed to get a van and we were leaving together. And it's like 7:30 and we're waiting for our van, and he's like, I'm not going. And I'm like, and he's the same age as my son too, which I had a personal connection with him from the very beginning. And I'm like, I looked at him and I said, if I didn't have a business to attend to, I wouldn't leave either. And so,
Wow.
yeah, he's still here. And I went back. I was going to go. I had every intention of keeping my commitment to the business and following through what I thought was integrity at the time, which was keeping my commitments. Unfortunately, somewhere along the line, I missed that my first commitment is with myself. And so, I went back and I told everybody, I was like, if I didn't have, I feel like God wants me there. Like, I feel like that's where I'm supposed to be. If I didn't have this business, I'd be there. I told my kids, I told everybody. It was like the most miraculous place ever. Like, there was just something real. And so I kept trying to just go through the motions with the business. And I just remember things were getting darker and darker. And like I was so on fire for this business and I knew it was my soul calling. And then I'm just like, there's this disconnect. I'm like, okay, I thought it was this. And now I know I'm supposed to be somewhere else. Like, how do I get out of this? Like, and I know even my clients would come in and they'd say, Amy, you're like losing your light. Like you're going deep into darkness. And it was just like, I know I'm not supposed to be here, which doesn't make any sense because I knew that I was supposed to do this business. Like there's one way or there's a right and wrong, or that wasn't a part of the process. And I can see it. I can see it all now beautifully. And so it took about 6 months. After about 3 months, finally at the beginning of January, we're like, okay, it's funny because the business before I came to Remember Experience was starting to pick up. We weren't making any money, but we had a huge overhead. And then after the Remember Experience, it like tanked. And we were like, oh, it's the holidays, it's Thanksgiving, Christmas, people will be back in the new year. And so around the end of January, February, we had to make some tough decisions, which was basically, it hasn't even been a year. We both put like all this money, time, effort, took a year to get the equipment. Like we've been working on this for years, and we had to make a decision to either sell or just like close out. And that was a really tough decision. But I had a mentor at the time who clarified to me that integrity, which obviously I didn't know, was to yourself first and your soul. And so once she told me that, it was almost like she gave me permission to not go back on my word and commitment to my business partner, to close up this business. And so then after that, um, my sister and my daughter and I came to the May Remember experience.
I remember
And
that.
up until that, in the meantime, between the November and the May, I sold my house. We dissolved the business, and I pretty much got rid of everything, which, of course, everybody on the outside world is like, okay, we always knew you were crazy, but like you're way off your rocker now. And it was literally, I just remember like my son just questioned me. I'm like, oh my God, getting rid of all my stuff is like the most freeing thing ever. And so yeah, so I came out here in May to try it out, and have pretty much been here since. I did leave, for about 6 weeks, but yeah, so I'm talking a lot. Do you have any or do you have questions, or is this a good time for you to?
I Well, what's interesting is that you're in such a flow and it's going exactly how it's supposed to. Like, almost every question that I had was coming up through you answering it, the next thing, so it was
Okay,
really beautiful.
all right.
And, so how has life been for you here in the village now that you've been here since May? How has that been?
Oh, it has been one of the toughest, rawest times of my life. Everything that I'd been running away from for 50 years was coming up in my body emotionally, like coming up for release. And just, if it weren't for this village providing a safe space, like I understand God now, and He never gives you what you can't handle. And, I really, to unpack all the darkness that I had been running from, I needed to be in a space of love, or I would have done the suicide attempts again, because that was my go-to. It was like, if things get too painful, I can always check out. And that was my go-to with relationships, with feelings, with everything. And so it's been one of the toughest, hardest, most miraculous, perfect um, times of my life. Like really consistently since I've been here since the end of July and haven't left. And just literally, even unfolding my childhood and understanding and making connections and understanding all the dynamics that never made sense within me, within my family dynamics. Within all that, it's been the best time of my life. And there's so much love. I mean, our signs say you've got to go through hell first, and that is very real. You have to feel everything that you've been suppressing all your life. And just this community is like none other. Most real, raw space of loving kindness that I didn't even know existed. And just having so much support here is, you know, is actually hard for me to receive, because I don't know what to do with that. Like, I've never been in a space like that where I've been held and loved for my crazy, you know? It's like, and the vulnerability and being just applauded for tears and all the things. It's just the exact opposite of everything I've ever known. And the most amazing place on earth as far as I'm concerned. And when I'm really deeply in my darkness, I want to run and I want to leave. And I hate it and I hate everyone and everything. But I know that once I'm through all these emotions that I've suppressed for so long, that literally anything is possible. And so I'm able to touch that. I know that's real. And I know God is real because I see it in my whole community here. And so, yeah, I'm so grateful for that.
If there was someone who is going through exactly what you went through and needed to hear something right now from you, someone who's walked that journey, what would you say to them?
I would say you can't keep running. You know, you have to go within. There's nothing outside of you that can feel. If you're feeling a void or restless, there is nothing except for God. There's no drug, alcohol, man, food. There's nothing that can satisfy the hole in the heart other than God. And if you're doing anything else other than connecting to God, you're running away from yourself and God. And for me, the only reason I was looking outside of myself is because I was looking for validation because I hated myself so much. And so I was looking for something else to either validate me in men or something to numb me from the fact that I I hated myself and I did not want to be in this body. And so what I would say is stop running and start connecting to God because he's the only person who who can give you wholeness and peace and joy and love, like that connection. And I'm not always in it and I disconnect and then I come back. But I know when I am in that connection that it's very real. And that is the one thing that I desire more than anything is just to be and stay connected to God. Because if I can connect to God, I can connect to myself and I can connect to everyone else around me. And, you know, us together as a community, you know, there's nothing we can't do when we've got the full power of God running in and through us. And, you know, that would be my message.
Thank you. That was really beautiful and heartfelt. Is there anything that you'd like to say to Earthwaking Village?
The first thing I heard was giving me my life back, but I don't ever think I actually had my life or like had a life. So thank you for getting me. My daughter's here too, so I do want to mention that she's been here, and thank you, Earthwaking, for assisting in restoring our relationship and clearing the lineage of some very dark places. You know, Chris and Tammy just, you know, just helping me to bring clarity to what is going on. There's this 3D world that we think is all there is, and that's actually nothing. Like there's so much else going on in the spiritual world. So thank you, Earthwaking, for opening my eyes, breaking through this heart wall of crap that has been covering up my heart and my emotions, and just opening my ears to hear the voice of God. And just thank you for being a beacon of light for the world and showing us there is another way, and it's not, you know, there is no other way except for God. And so if you're even on the fence, if anybody's listening to this, they're on the fence, they want to try us out, yes, 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 start with some classes and just it is the only real place I know I've ever been. And I'm just super grateful for you for doing this, to getting the message out for people that are going through a lot of darkness. We know what's going on in the world, and we all need a safe place to be and to be held and to be loved. And Earthwaking is a place for that.
So how can people get a hold of you?
If we can drop a link to my email down below, that would be great. Down below in the chat. Oh, do I do that?
No, I'll do it. I'll put it
Oh,
in the
okay.
description box. But
Okay.
I was pointing for people to see, like
Yeah.
down below. Click the
Down
link.
below. Yes. Yes. Please contact me if there's anything in my story that hit you that I can assist in your journey of be of service. I would love to do that. So don't hesitate to reach out to me or Earthwaking Village at all.
Yes, there'll be some resources and support for you down in the description box below. Again, I just want to thank you, Amy. Thank you for being real. Thank you for being raw and opening your heart and sharing the spaces a lot of people don't go to touch, you know? And everything that we deny of ourselves, the Lord's going to say, you denied me. That's me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm taking all of you with me. Not anything gets left behind. And so just thank you. Thank you for walking that journey. Thank you for walking that path. So many people can say that, hey, there's a way home. You know, we constantly try to just neglect the darkness or the shadows of our life. And we don't see that that's actually what's holding up our light.
Yes.
We wouldn't be anywhere without that mess. We wouldn't have a message. So it's the journey, it's the process in which we get to unfold all of it. So I just thank you so much for sharing that and sharing your heart with so many people that might be going through that dark time that can find the light for themselves. So again, thank you for joining us on the On Purpose podcast. And till next time.